let's just sort of dive right into like the issues of the day. Do you still call yourself a white nationalist, or do you call yourself a white identitarian? How do you self-identify?
No, I have never called myself a white nationalist. Not necessarily because I am not, but the term nationalist, like a Basque nationalist or a Kurdish nationalist, it has a kind of a bomb throwing perfume to it, which I
Mhm.
completely reject. I call myself a white advocate and a race realist. I advocate for the people of my race, like so many people of different races do for their races.
And do you think that? Yeah, I guess that makes sense. We don't call Al Sharpton a black nationalist. You could call him a black nationalist, but right, that's not. So yeah, if we want symmetry here, we could
Yeah.
say a white advocate. Um, do you think that historically the groups that have had activists on their behalf, has that been the path towards success and prosperity? I mean, has that worked out well for blacks, do you think, since the 1960s? Or is racial activism perhaps something that groups don't necessarily need?
Oh, blacks clearly think they need it, and they have benefited tremendously for it in terms of racial preferences, for example, and other racial groups in this country. They have lobbied very, very hard for open borders, at least for their people, and to that extent, they've benefited enormously. Now, the reason why there never was the equivalent of a white advocate in the past is that no one ever found the necessity even for the word. The idea that white people in America assumed that this was a country built by white people as an outpost of Europe, no one ever doubted that. And that was going to be the way it was going to be right until the end of eternity. And if, I'm sure, you had told the people in 1965 who were voting in Congress for the Immigration Act that completely began this transformation of the demographics of the United States, if you told them, look, you vote for this law, and in about 80, 90 years, whites will be a minority, they would have said, hell no, we ain't doing it. So this was taken for granted right from the very founding of the United States that this was essentially a European country.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the issue is when you say someone is a white activist, that could mean a whole lot of things, and white people disagree on issues of public policy and philosophy, just like other people do. So if you say you're a white activist, you could be
Advocate, yes.
advocate. Okay. Well, what's the difference?
Yes.
What do you see this difference between advocate and activist?
Well, if we really want to split hairs, an activist I see as someone who is out in the world organizing, making groups, who may be dropping banners. I really just sit in my room and stare at a keyboard and make videos and talk to people. So
Uh,
you can be an activist, you can be an advocate without really being an activist. But it's two different ways of advancing, I think, the legitimate interests of whites.
okay. Um, Okay, fair enough. So yeah, so when you say you're a white advocate, that could be anything, right? So you could be a communist and be a white advocate, presumably,
Sure,
as long as you don't believe
sure.
in redistribution to other races. You could be a fundamentalist capitalist. You could be a socialist. You could be
Yeah.
anything in between. You could be an environmentalist, or you could be sort of in the pocket of the oil and gas lobby. You can have a positive view of fossil fuels or a negative view of fossil fuels. Um,
Yes.
why not just have these debates? Why have white advocacy as its own specific project?
Well, that's a very fundamental question. And to ask the question, it seems to me, is almost to misread the current situation, not only in the United States, but in the entire world. Every national group and every racial group has an instinctive loyalty to that group. And you see this wherever you look. We have black activists or black advocates. We have Hispanics. We have Asians. Just take the United States Congress. You have a black congressional Congress. What's its job? Its job is to examine legislature and to examine laws and say, what's in it for us? What's in it for the brothers? It's the same for the Hispanic caucus, the Asian caucus, but whites are not expected to have any interests. We are the only ones who are forbidden to have any group interests because that makes us white supremacists, that makes us Nazis, that makes us socially, utterly undesirable and worse, and banned from Twitter. So there is a tremendous tremendous asymmetry when every other group has an instinctive fellow feeling and wishes to link arms to advance their interests, and if sometimes at our expense, if whites are merely individuals, then we would be taken advantage of by people who are very successfully pushing their interests, often at our expense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's right. So it's a point that everyone else has their group interest. So it's a very basic argument that if somebody advocates for blacks and someone advocates for Hispanics, whites will be sort of left out in the cold. And
Well, it's
you know,
unilateral disarmament.
yeah, but I mean, there's also another way of looking at it. So there are people who disagree with white activism and white advocacy, and also disagree with black advocacy and Hispanic advocacy. And the question is like having having whites act more like blacks and Hispanics, is that going to have a positive effect for whites? Maybe, okay, they get rid of affirmative action, so they've done a few things that are clearly in white interests.
Yeah.
Um, but is seeing public policies through a racial prism, is this necessarily the best way to go forward just because other groups see things in that way? So I'll give you, for example, sort of a concrete interest story. So like something like 40-50% of American Fortune 500 CEOs, you look at Pence, you look at Nobel Prize winners, like something like 40-50% of them are foreign born. Some of those are white. Many of those are from India or China or Israel, if you consider whether or not you consider Israel a white country. And from my perspective, shutting off immigration, high skilled immigration, would have a major impact on whites and blacks and Hispanics. It's not necessarily zero sum. If we let in Elon Musk, for example, Elon Musk came from South Africa, maybe under a immigration restrictionist policy, South Africa would be considered a black country. Let's say Elon Musk doesn't get into the country, we don't have SpaceX, we don't have Tesla, so on and so forth. We don't have the free speech on X because nobody buys it and lets you come back. And so that wouldn't be in white interest. It wouldn't be in black interest. It wouldn't be in Hispanic interest if I think Elon Musk didn't come to America. The same with the founder of NVIDIA named Jensen Huang. He's a child of Taiwanese immigrants and has created remarkable value for the country. So, what about the argument that you could advocate for white interests? You end up seeing this world through a racial lens, and you end up sort of shooting yourself in the foot because you adopt these illiberal policies like restricting immigration based on race, for example.
Well, first of all, you're looking at it strictly from an economic point of view. I believe that a nation is far more than GNP per capita. You may believe that human beings are atomized individuals and they are in it for themselves, and their idea is to make as much money as possible. That's not the way I think. That's not the way most humans think. And if you want to transform Homo sapiens into strictly an economic animal, that might make sense. But most human beings have what you might consider irrational attachments. The most obvious irrational attachment is to your own family. You love your children more than you love the children of strangers because they're yours, not necessarily because they are objectively superior. This is a natural, healthy feeling. And for most people, the largest group to which they feel a kind of instinctive loyalty is their extended racial family. Their race is their largest extended family. You find this throughout the world. And it is only whites who have been traditionally extremely individualistic, who have adapted precisely the argument you're making about the nature of their society. They didn't used to do this. At first, when the United States was founded as an explicitly white country. And as you know, the very first citizenship law in the United States passed by the very first Congress. It's a brand new country, deciding who's going to live here, what's it going to be like. And they said naturalization was going to be restricted to free white persons of good character. What does that tell you about the founding? That was the idea of America. And then to say, well, okay, suddenly it's open to the whole world. And so long as they come and they work hard, it doesn't make any difference. If they're Hindus or they're Somalis or Guatemalans, it doesn't make any difference. That is a radical departure from the way America was founded and what Americans took for granted. And to me, quite frankly, it makes no difference if immigrants are 10 feet tall, twice as smart as I am, twice as productive. It is my country built by my ancestors with their heritage in mind, wanting to have their own destiny in their own hands. They did not want to give it away to people, even if they were infinitely superior to them. And of course, I would argue that in many cases, many people coming across the border do not make substantial contributions. So there we have a completely alternative view of what America should be. It's not simply a group of individuals trying to improve per capita GNP. That to me is not a nation. That might be a corporation, but it's not the way real human beings think.